The content you're about to enjoy comes from the archives of The Best You. We're devoted to the very best in personal development. With a magazine and resources dedicated to inspiring and changing people's lives, at The Best You, we work with the world's leading writers and trainers on the evolution of the self, and people whose journeys have been affected by their work and words. For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.
Hello, good afternoon. I am going to start a little bit early because I've got loads of content to get through. So thank you so much for coming. I know it's the end of your afternoon, and there's probably better things to do than watching me talk. Well, hopefully not, actually. So I'm going to be talking about from bedroom to boardroom, and it is a very large mix of my experience, what I've done recently, as well as kind of what I'm really passionate about, which is how to grow businesses, VC funds, startups through the power of collaboration, specifically sponsorship. So it's a very broad mix, but I promise you in terms of sponsorship, I definitely think it's the future of how you market and grow your business. But equally, a lot of it's about the changing way of communications and how we as consumers interact with brands and how brands are able to interact with us. So I'll just start by saying my name's Jackie Fast. I founded a business in my bedroom, hence bedroom to boardroom, with £2,000 in a rented flat in London 6 years ago, with the premise that sponsorship was a really important tool for businesses to utilize, and they were doing it really shit. So I kind of decided to do things better. Within the first, but before I kind of get there, actually, I should probably tell you a bit of a story. I grew up really liking maths. Now, the reason I loved maths is because I very much like to be right. And when I say I like to be right, with maths, you can add 2 + 2 and that gets 4. I can call somebody in the Ukraine and ask them what 2 + 2 is. The answer would be 4. I can call my mother in Canada who is sleeping and she'd still wake up and know that the answer to 2 + 2 is 4. So there's no grayscale. There's no variables. And I loved it. And I was actually a mathematician. I am a mathematician by trade. But probably much like all of you, I came out of university in something totally unrelated to what I studied and what I was good at. My first job was working in a golf resort where I was the sponsorship manager, where I oversaw event projects basically on the resort. Now, the first year that I worked there, I did this really great golf event thing with a bank, and they were super, super pleased. It was super sunny. He won a new client. Everybody loved me. When I called him the next day to ask him if he wanted to renew his sponsorship, he said yes, without hesitation. And so I kind of walked away from that experience thinking I was shit hot at sponsorship. And screw math, actually sponsorship is my calling. I'm so good at my job. The next year, obviously he renewed. So the next year, fast forward 365 days later, I woke up in the morning and it was pissing down with rain. Now, even if you don't play golf, you know that's not a good thing. So I didn't really think much of it, but obviously went to my job, looking forward to the event that I did. The guy that owned the bank was there, wasn't obviously that happy. Only half the people showed up to the event that he sponsored. Again, I'm pretty sure we don't need to work in sponsorship to know that's not a good thing either. After the event, he had a really bad game, as did everybody else. And so when I called him the next day and asked him to renew, I couldn't get through. He wouldn't take my call. And I couldn't really figure out why. When I finally called him to ask him if he wanted to renew for next year, he said no. And much to my surprise, I didn't really have anything to say. Because quite frankly, I had no idea why he was sponsoring it in the first place. Now, the thing that was really, really annoying to me is that I can't really control the weather. So how am I supposed to be good at my job when my job is dependent on the weather? And again, going back to my maths brain, it doesn't make sense. It's a terrible situation to be in. Your job is wholly dependent on variables that you cannot control. So that I found incredibly challenging. This was my first job out of university. So the the variables that are in situations like this, whether it's within events, whether it's sponsorship, whether it's collaborative effort through other business partnerships, is very challenging because the input that goes into it is out of your control. You don't know what the skill set of your other partner is. You don't know what the brand's bringing to the table at the beginning of a deal. And most importantly, had I asked the question, why are you sponsoring it? What are you trying to get out of it? I probably would have at least kind of come up with a solution in the event that it had rained, or at least worked harder at getting him his new client or getting more people there in the rain. Parkas would have been nice. So I came out of that experience trying to figure out, what can I do to make this easier on myself? What can I do to streamline this? How can I go about my business so that I know at the end of any event that I do, any sponsorship that I do, the answer is 4, that I can predict it. So the best thing that I did is I went around and I asked people questions. What is the best sponsorship? What does success look like? And the answers are always very similar, of which I've totally forgotten that I changed the slides around from the last one. I'm so sorry. I've just flown in from Moscow. Same presentation, slightly different. And the whole thing is the holy grail of sponsorship is around renewals. A sponsorship works because there's ROI for brand. That the sponsorship works because people renew it. There are really easy answers, and yet so often people fail to hit the mark. So I kind of left Canada with this, I guess, percolating in the back of my mind, and decided to backpack to London. I never met anybody from England. I'd never been to England. I don't have any family in England. I don't know what I was thinking, honestly, because it was a really ridiculous thing to do. But I was up really late one night, and I decided to buy a one-way flight and travel to London. That was 15 years ago. And much like if you were here and the other speaker, especially if you're not English, it's quite different. But I had this idea of this: how can you start streamlining 2 + 2 into 4 in very, very diverse situations, specifically around sponsorship? And so I ended up setting up a business again in my bedroom that I've kind of outlined already, around how can you create, because people spend 60 billion a year in sponsorship spending. I consult for an insurance company who spends 300 million a year in sponsorship on a whole bunch of projects. This is a massive industry, and there are brands that are doing this a lot, and yet they're doing exactly what I did in my golf experience without any way of measuring it, without any understanding of control. Now, within the first year, I was working with people like Prince, the Rolling Stones, and brands like Red Bull. 6 years on from that, I was working with bigger global brands, Shell. I also worked directly with Richard Branson and people like Elton John. All I do is help these very, very good at making money people make more money. That is all I do. I'm very, very good at it. I wrote a book about it. And the reason really is honing this idea about how you streamline variables, going back to mathematician ways, and how do you work more collaboratively to get the best out of both parties. So just to kind of sow the seeds in terms of making sure everybody understands exactly what I do, I thought I'd just show you a bit of a video of something that I worked on this year. This is the Extreme Tech Challenge, which is on Necker Island, which is effectively a competition
challenge, because we wanted to attract the types of entrepreneurs that also have an extreme approach to solving the world's problems. In a place with far away, in a land where the sun will hide its eyes.
Over 1,000 companies competing to try to get the attention and visibility of 25 venture capital kind of judges to get into a top 10.
Today we're here on Necker Island, where it's all going to go down. This is the grand finale, where the top 3 companies in the running are going to fight for the first place.
Well, welcome everybody. Snap is the world's only high-performance flying camera that can be safe around people.
What we make is a gel that stops traumatic bleeding instantly without the need to apply pressure.
Protocycler is the first and only technology in the world that can automatically and safely recycle waste plastic into 3D printer filament.
Congratulations to Vantage.
like this, and a lot of stuff in blockchain, a lot of kind of forward-thinking industries that are kind of just getting their feet are so hyper-reliant on sponsorship. Not only for the money, actually, more so than that. It's about getting the awareness out there to everybody. And brands have the capability of doing that because of their vast networks and obviously all of the departments that they've got at their disposal. So the great thing that I have within my job is I spend probably 6 weeks out of 52 on Necker Island, which is always very nice in the British Islands. Very, very sunny. But I actually changed tack slightly. I sold my business after 6 years, which was last year, because I stopped being able to say no to really cool shit that was happening and was working way too much. And now I've written a book of which you can get later. But and I do a bit of talking about stuff like this because I actually think it's really, really relevant and really important that people start understanding whether you're starting a business, whether you have a business, whether you're looking to start a business, understanding the framework for collaboration, because I swear to God, it is really the only way you can grow and kind of accelerate your business faster than just sitting kind of at home. So the kind of concepts that I wanted to go through with you, I just wanted to kind of get a very easy baseline. But I always like to ask the question, what is sponsorship? Now, I appreciate not all of you here are even in sponsorship, but just for fun, to humor me, does anybody want to have like a go to give me a definition? I'll get on your wave. Anybody hit me. Perfect. Okay. What was said was somebody pays money to be associated with a theme or another company. Some people are nodding. Does anybody disagree? Does it always have to be money? No, you're shaking your head. What does it have to be then? Okay, it doesn't have to be money. An association. Yeah, so it could be an association. Anybody else? Yeah? Value. So effectively, there needs to be a transaction. Do we agree? Yeah? Do we think that one person needs to benefit more than another? No? Do we think that they should benefit equally? Okay, fine, good enough. So my definition is basically it's a form of marketing where two or more organizations partner together in order to create mutual benefits for both parties. Now, I normally kind of grill people a lot more harder than that, but the thing that most people never get to is the most important part, which is that they would not have been able to achieve on their own. The difference between sponsorship and advertising is effectively just that last part of that line. And the reason why is if you're trying to market a business or a product, if you yourself are a brand that are trying to get new awareness, it's really easy to do advertising.
For complimentary resources from my book, my complimentary e-course, The Power of the Question, or recommended reads, go to www.thequestion.com/resources. For more information on my coaching or mentoring, go to www.bernardo-moya.com.
It's a hell of a lot easier, actually. When you talk about the lack of variables that go in, you can kind of own your own campaign and you find a market to get to. However, sponsorship allows you to do something that advertising cannot. And we'll go into kind of why and who, but effectively, all it is about is reaching an audience. Whether that is reinforcing your brand with the audience that you currently have, whether that's looking for a new audience. But the reason why sponsorship is so different or so much harder is that one-way communications have changed into two-way communications. And this is absolutely fundamental in the way that we market. Now, when I talk about this, what I mean is that up until 5, 10, 15 years ago, you actually had no idea about most of the things about the brands that you purchased. You didn't know who sat on their board. You often didn't know their vision statement, and you often didn't have an interaction. You now have all of this information that's accessible to you. That never existed. Not only that, if you don't like your Coca-Cola can or hypothetically you found a finger in it, you could tweet about it. And that tweet would get seen by millions of people. That's never happened before. And now if we talk about how partnerships and collaboration works in order to reach an audience, the fact that that audience now has the power to influence brands and the brands have the power to communicate to their customers totally is a game changer. Now, I want to just explain this slightly because it's not that it always was. Now, Does anybody know what brand recall is? Brand recall is not necessarily phenomena, but it's an instinctive thing of people when they purchase brands and they're used to seeing a brand, they'll feel more comfortable buying it. So I actually know the marketing director of Coca-Cola, and in the 80s, literally the marketing scheme was, we like your shit, so please drink our shit. I'm like, not even joking. That was the board directive. Now, what they did is they plastered their logo and everything that was kind of fun related and happiness related. So that was sport, that was music, that was everything. And they've had a monopoly on that product, basically Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola soda, forever. And it's a weird monopoly because the only reason they have that monopoly is purely for we like your shit, so please drink our shit. Now, interestingly enough, when you talk to people who are consumers about the actual product itself, 9 times out of 10, it's something like 91% of people prefer the taste of Pepsi. Now, this was discovered in the late 80s, and when Pepsi found this out, they thought, oh my God, what we'll do is we'll just educate the market. And they did something called the Pepsi Taste Test Challenge. They put all of their eggs in one basket, spent multi-millions of pounds. This was huge in America, but it was literally a global campaign. And what you did is you poured a bit of Coke, a bit of Pepsi, covered them up, you drank them, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, you like Pepsi. Now, an interesting thing happened. They thought this would turn it around because 9 times out of 10, people prefer the taste of Pepsi. But what happened is Coca-Cola's market share grew, which is weird, right? Now, the reason why is if you look at this, what happened is when they revealed the cups, they reinforced the Coca-Cola branding. And so while Coca-Cola was still branding all the stuff that you like, Pepsi-Cola was reinforcing Coca-Cola's brand. And actually, this campaign did worse for Pepsi, but because of brand recall, because this stuff used to work. So when we talk about one-way communications changing into two-way communications, one-way communications is not a bad thing. It's just a shift in the market. And actually, most of us, from a consumer's perspective and a marketer's perspective, are still not getting to grips with that. And so I wanted to, this is a really great video. It's got good music on it, but I'll just kind of show you another thing.
Around the world.
Has anybody seen that before? Cool. I've been showing that video for 5 years, or obviously iterations of that video, and the stats have been changing dramatically even in those 5 years. But the interesting thing about that, actually, it puts our changing world in some real-time stats that we can kind of understand. Now, I always show that video. People love it because the music is always fun, and I can see people are trickling in as we speak. But actually, the more important concept, again, going back to why we're here in terms of one-way communications and two-way, I like to just kind of take a real-world example. I fly a crazy amount, and I am, on my peak, I'm probably on a long haul once a week. And I always used to think it was really sexy, when you grow up and you think it's very fancy. I hate it. I really, really hate it. And the reason I hate it so much as well is I'm actually really OCD about sleeping, and I have a hard time sleeping, especially in a new country, especially with jet lag. And the thing that I really hate the most is that pillows. I get really, really funny about pillows. And I need to have a really good pillow when I arrive in a hotel, mostly because I have some huge meeting or pitch or whatever it is. And I got so bad that I used to kind of pack a pillow in my suitcase, and everybody thought it was super crazy. Now, I just got back from Hong Kong recently, but let's just take my journey from Hong Kong 15 years ago. What would normally happen is I would get on the plane and I would open up the in-flight magazine. And in that magazine, I'd see an advertisement, and it would say, Hilton Hotels in Hong Kong have the best pillows in Hong Kong. And I would think, interesting. I like pillows. They have good pillows. Interesting. I come off the plane. I walk down the corridor. There's a 48 sheet, and there's a girl that looks like me, and it says Hilton Hotels have the best pillows, and they're goose down. And I think, I like goose down. Very, very good. Hilton Hotels, they know the importance of pillows. I like a brand that understands. I come off, I pick up my bag, I go through customs. I don't speak to the woman at the information desk because she obviously works in Hong Kong. I pick up the pamphlet instead and find out that Hilton Hotels is 40 minutes from the airport, and they're sustainable, and it says more stuff about the pillows, which I like. Now, it's no surprise that I would stay in Hilton Hotels. But let's take my actual journey. I just flew back 2 weeks ago. And what I did is I went on TripAdvisor and I typed in the word pillows in Hong Kong. And did you know that there are 53 comments about pillows in Hong Kong hotels specifically? And it turns out Hilton Hotels have really terrible pillows. So let's take the exact same journey. I get onto the plane, I open the in-flight magazine, and there's an advertisement that says Hilton Hotels have the best pillows. And instead I say, that's not true. I come off the plane, there's a 48 sheet, girl looks like me, saying Hilton Hotels have the best pillows, they're goose down. And I think, my God, Hilton is spending a lot of money trying to fix this pillow issue they've got. Now I come through the corridor, I pick up my bags, I go through customs, and I don't stop at the information desk because I already know where I'm staying because I already bought my hotel. Now that is the difference. Things, when you purchase, the purchase behavior, the purchase cycle has changed so dramatically. The things that give us the information to buy the things that we want to buy, to make the decisions that we make every day is so different. So I can show you that great video with Daft Punk and you can nod along, but actually fundamentally how you market your business, how you look at partnerships, how going back again, sponsorship, you give value to somebody is so different. And the principles that used to work for Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola in the 80s and the 90s no longer work now. They're not even close to being relevant. So things that purchase and the things that influence this change. So again, I'm just going to use another case study to kind of
when Coca-Cola asked us to bring back the polar bears for this year's big matchup between New England and New York, the agency knew it would be a challenge. Cute bears and football don't necessarily go together. unless they're part of an unprecedented campaign, the first to fully integrate football, polar bears, and how viewers consume media in and around the most watched sporting event on Earth. It started with a digital idea that cast the polar bears as football fans, one rooting for New England, one for New York. Then invited America to watch the Bears watch the game live. As the game was played, we puppeted the polar bears, making them react to everything that happened in real time. When New England scored, the New England Bear celebrated. When New York scored, the New York Bear did the same. And when the halftime show really got going, so did the Bears. They even reacted to the advertising, from the racy ads to the patriotic ads to the ads of our competitors. The entire campaign generated enormous chatter. Twitter and Facebook lit up with over 5,000 comments per minute. And despite not having thumbs, the polar bears responded to fans in real time. Fans who were watching the Bears watched the game on over 9 million screens. And watching for an average of 28 minutes per screen, that's a really long commercial. That's also a lot of eyeballs. When the television aired, the spots were synced with our digital stream and also reacted to the game. Multiple versions were produced and aired based on how the game was going. After the game, publications looking beyond traditional advertising ranked the campaign as a first, carving out a new space for digital, real-time advertising with unprecedented results. Not bad for a webcam from the Arctic.
Now, the interesting thing about the campaign is really about the stats. So 9 million users streamed in for 28 minutes. Now, when you take into account that the average cost of a 30-second slot is $3.5 million US, the value of that campaign is $195 million. Now, more interestingly than that is that Coca-Cola wasn't the sponsor, Pepsi-Cola was. So it changes everything that you think about sponsorship, business, marketing, all of that. And all of this stuff needs to be considered when you're looking at starting a business. And fundamentally, it's not about the logo. So if you are an event and you are looking for sponsors, normally the first thing that most people say is, we'll put a logo on it. So we'll put a logo on the lanyard. We'll put a logo on the program. We'll give you all this great stuff like putting logos on stuff. But yet we've already agreed that that sponsorship is about mutual benefit. So if you're not putting logos and stuff because logos don't give value, it makes you think, then what are you giving? What can you give? What are my benefits in this changing kind of consumer marketing place? And the great thing about that is sponsorship provides the perfect platform for engagement. As you heard in the last talk, and I'm sure all of the talks that you've heard over the last 2 days, we're hit with 55,000 marketing messages a day. We are inundated with stuff. And sponsorship provides that cut through. So actually, it's a really great platform for you to grow your business, their business, all of that stuff. You just need to learn how to do it more effectively. So it's great because it's interactive, it's multimedia, and most importantly, it creates fan loyalty, which is exactly what you want. And it really is about the creation of content. And I spoke to somebody earlier about branded content and the importance of that. But it really is about how you get the right assets to create that branded content. Because what you initially think captures an audience today is not necessarily what will capture them in a week, a month from today.
For more information on collaborating, partnering, sponsoring, supporting, or speaking at any of our events, or finding out more about our legacy clubs, go to www.thebestyou.co. If you're interested in finding out more about the amazing content we have, please go to www.thebestyou.online and get your 14-day free trial now.
So again, it looks at how you can use a simple idea that resonates for the audience that you're looking at engaging with. So just in terms of kind of just wrapping up this small section, but in terms of new rules, how you would go about approaching stuff like that, it's not about the logo. Being authentic is super important because that's what resonates. And of course, the simple message resonates. I am slowly running out of time and I want to make sure I've got time for questions. So I'm just going to keep rolling on. But I just did want to leave you with some ideas about what is the future? If you wanted to go out and get sponsors, if you yourself wanted to sponsor something, what does this look like now? If logos no longer are important for mutual benefit, how do we go about and create mutual benefit for multiple parties? Now, I like to show that. So everybody knows the North Face, yeah? Cool. Outdoorsy brand. Now, if you think about an outdoorsy brand, their audience are outdoors. So how do you market to people that are outdoorsy? You can't go and stick your logo on rocks telling them about this new jacket that's coming out in September. Doesn't make sense. The other big challenge about outdoorsy people is they don't go in packs. So, you have football fans, they get into a stadium, they're all together, you can throw some marketing at them. Same thing with music. They're in a venue, throw some marketing at them. Outdoorsy people, typically by themselves or a mate, climbing a random rock in a random place. Very challenging when it comes to trying to create a marketing strategy. So what the North Face tended to do is they sponsored random things. So they would sponsor a yoga retreat. They would sponsor outdoor hiking. They would sponsor kind of all these different things. But actually, commercially, that doesn't make sense because it is spending a lot of money doing totally different projects that are not cohesive. So rather than continue to push a square peg in a round hole, what they did is they created a totally different event, the Night Rave Festival. And the great thing about this is that not only could they speak to all of their audience at one time in one way to engage with their product, they actually thought, is there another brand who's having a hard time reaching these very difficult to reach outdoorsy people? And of course, there are many, but actually Jeep is also having the same challenge. So what they did is they went and approached Jeep, and Jeep sponsored it. So when you actually pull back all of the layers, Jeep is actually paying for the North Face's marketing campaign. And this is happening a lot more, mostly because a lot of brands are getting very tired of the traditional rights holder method. And actually, again, I didn't really think about saying this, but if you yourself are an online platform or a different platform, brands are really looking for these types of things. And that is specifically what I do. So this is one future trend, brands becoming rights holders or kind of coming away of things. The second is technology. I could literally bang on this for 8 hours, but I'm not going to. Specifically, Open API. Anybody know that? Okay. Open API is basically the back-end code. So when you are using Ocado or you want to call an Uber, all of that stuff, all of the creation of that platform is code. And what Open API means is rather than keep all of the code to themselves, they share it with the world. Now, Open API has created a really interesting opportunity for partnerships, of which I'll kind of go through with you. There's more about what technology does in terms of critical mass beyond VC funding. I don't have time to go into that really. And obviously audience creation. So if you wanted to reach a football fan, you no longer have to go to Tottenham Hotspur's stadium. You can actually sponsor Copa 90, which is now an online platform for those people who are football fans. And so it doesn't actually matter what team you're actually looking at sponsoring. So all of these things through technology has provided a totally different approach to how brands and rights holders approach partnership. So this partnership was purely done through Open API. And this is really, really revolutionary in the fact that this is how business sharing and partnership and synergistic integration can now work. And it provides the opportunity to share totally differing audiences, but joining them up through one common theme. The third trend, and this is the final one, so don't worry, I'm almost done, is brands are really now considering whether their sponsorship is working. You no doubt would have heard Barclays canned their Boris Bike situation. They lost money to do so, but actually it wasn't working. So the point of spending more money on something, it was just better to pay money to get out of it. This is another example that's probably not as well known. Vodafone has been sponsoring a team for 18 years. They spend $30 million a year. And the reason that they did so 20 years ago, the reason most people that bought Vodafone were white males that kind of ran the household. They chose the broadband provider and the bills. And in addition to that, Vodafone wanted to be seen as forward-thinking. So what they did is they sponsored the thing that made them look forward-thinking in front of white males. And Formula One was that such thing. Now, fast forward to now, 20 years on, the people that buy Vodafone are actually not just white males. There's a huge, diverse amount of people that purchase broadband now. Obviously, women have a lot more buying power, but it's not just that. And their audience has been more diverse than it ever has before. And so when they're looking at their number one marketing partnership, which is their Formula One team, they wanted to start understanding, is this still working for our audience? And does that audience think this is innovative? And not only is it reaching the wrong audience, the audience that they do want to speak to don't even watch Formula One at all, nor do they think it's innovative. So what they did is they canned the total team, and they replaced it with something called Vodafone First. Now, Vodafone First is a content creation site, and it actually looks at their key target audiences and demographics and helps approach them in the way that it's about being first, having the momentum to start something new. So this actually includes a dad cooking dinner for his family for the first time, to what I'm going to show you next, which is kind of a bit of a spin on their Formula One stuff, but it speaks to their audiences in different ways to resonate their message further through, again, just content creation.
Nordschleife ist die ultimative Herausforderung. Hier ist die grüne Hölle.
Hölle. Oh Gott, Mensch. Jetzt ist meine Zeit, um mal zu zeigen, dass ich cooler bin als dein.
Schon ein kleines Weicheis, kann ich das sagen. Ja?
Auf damit! Wir sind bereit für eine Runde auf der Nürburgring.
So they replaced a £30 million marketing budget with Vodafone First, which is a fraction of that, but actually getting a lot more traction. And this is kind of the difference about how brands can communicate with you and how you can communicate with brands. And it creates a totally different way of, again, going back to mutual partnerships and benefit. So just to kind of recap, in terms of future trends, brands are becoming rights holders, which is a very interesting thing. OpenAPI produces digital and online partnerships, and it will continue to grow. This is huge. And unofficial platforms and partnerships are being creative, and not just being creative, they're being sought after. One of my big things that I work with the £300 million budget is really finding those transformative partnerships. And this is huge in this kind of area. Now, I'm just going to leave you with one final thought, and this is kind of, for me, a bit of a game changer, just to try to open up your mind in terms of what you think sponsorship is and can be. This next case study is my favorite case study. I work with a lot of I wouldn't say older people. I work with a lot of older people sitting in a lot of boardrooms talking about a lot of money. And before I ever take on any client, I show them this case study because it culminates everything I've spoken about, but really what the future of partnerships is.
Bing, Microsoft's search engine, came to us to drive trial of Bing Search and Maps and increase their relevance with a young audience. At the same time, we knew that Jay-Z would soon be launching his autobiography, Decoded. With one big idea, we harnessed this epic moment in pop culture, connected our client to a new demographic, and gave millions a reason to use Bing. We started by putting every page of Jay-Z's book out in the world, every day for a month, prior to the book's release. But the pages weren't just randomly placed. Every page's location was inspired by the story on each page, putting Jay-Z's entire biography in context. Fans could actually walk through Jay-Z's life right where it happened, finding pages in 13 major cities in the US and abroad, searching for everything from huge iconic billboards to unique collectible items. And if the media didn't exist near Jay-Z's life landmarks, we created it, taking the campaign to places money just can't buy. Gucci made custom jackets stitched with a page. A Cadillac wrapped with pages paid homage to the birthplace of New York hip-hop. A page about Big Pimpin' covered the bottom of the Delano pool. Even a bronze plaque was installed in the Marcy Projects, where Jay-Z spent his childhood. We let the story on each page determine each location. The unique pages covered hundreds of thousands of square miles. And as they were unveiled around the world, Bing tied every element of the campaign together with an integrated online game that directed fans to each page on the streets. Clues to the page locations were released daily through Facebook, Twitter, and radio. And every day for a month, millions of people gathered to solve the latest clues, guiding them to the exact street locations on Bing Search and Maps, documenting and claiming the pages they found. The unique framework allowed anyone, anywhere to walk the same streets and find a page. And over the course of the month-long campaign, they chased fame of their own as they assembled the book digitally at bing.com/JZ before the hardcover hit stores. Every single piece of the campaign was woven together with Bing technology to allow fans to experience his story. Average player engagement on our website was over 11 minutes. Jay-Z's Facebook followers grew by 1 million. And Decoded hit the bestsellers list for 19 straight weeks. Decode Jay-Z's success was covered by every major news outlet, every major cultural influencer. Even other celebrities weighed in. Bing became part of the pop culture conversation. And in only 1 month, Bing saw an 11.7% increase in visits, entering the global top 10 most visited sites for the first time, and earning 1.1 billion media impressions.
So the reason I always like to end kind of everything with this is I'd like to just go back for the very beginning of my presentation, of which we all agreed that it was mutual benefits. A sponsorship is for mutual benefits and all of the kind of definitions and descriptions. And I just want to leave you with a question, really. I want you to ask yourselves or the person next to you who you think the sponsor was and who you think the rights holder was, and argue the point, because this is what a truly integrated partnership looks like. Anyways, I'm done, so that's convenient. What I'm going to do, I haven't done this before, but I just got back from Moscow and they said that I should put my book online for free. So I have. You can catch it on SlideShare. It's the most random link, so take a picture of it if you want it. It will be available, I think, for like a week or something. But I've also got books. Sorry, I can go back to it, so don't stress. But I've also brought some books here as well. So if you want a book and you want it signed, I can do that now for like 15 minutes. And I'm also happy to take questions. These are my details. You can find me on Twitter. I've also got a website. I'll leave that there for you. All right, cool. Thanks, guys.
For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.